My name is Rami Emad. I'm a 3D artist by profession and at present co-founder at 88 Design Studio, an architecture, interior design and CG studio. I would like to take you on a journey of how I went from studying computer science to becoming a 3D artist working in the visualization industry and started doing concept artworks using artificial intelligence. In my final semester in university, I was introduced to a computer graphics course, but using coding as my major was computer science. And it was quite interesting to me, what's computer graphics and how can you do computer graphics using coding, which I was never good at. So we got introduced to that, and our first assignment was to create an animation, again using coding, which was kind of, how am I gonna do that? I went back home, stayed for like 8-10 hours trying to do the animation. It was quite late at night when I was at last successful at doing a pixel, one pixel, moving from the right end of the monitor to the left. And I was so happy. I was like, wow, I could do an animation. And I actually woke up my parents and told them to come and take a look at it. And they were standing there waiting for the animation to start while it was actually going on. And I was looking at their faces and they are like, where's the animation? I'm like, here, it's a pixel, you know, it's moving from here to here. I was so happy, to be honest. And that day was the starting point of me leaving the computer science field, which I studied, and deciding to work in what I really like and what I found as to be as my talent and what I really want to pursue, my passion, which is CG. It took me like maybe 16 to 18 hours a day just practicing on 3D Max until I could actually reach to the level. At that time, we're talking about 2004, 2005, which felt like, okay, I could be considered as a 3D artist, as I could provide some output, some renders. The renders we used to see at that time were like, wow, hyper realistic to us, which if you see at the moment were like amateur art, as amateur work actually. So I've taken it from there, 9 months non-stop practice until I got an interview at an events company. They asked me to create a design for an exhibition stand. I stayed again the whole day, the whole night trying to do that. The assignment was had to be submitted in a day. And I did an exhibition stand, which I was happy with. My father wasn't. He told me, Rami, this is not gonna work. It's not gonna get you the job. And I was like, no, this is enough. I went for a smoke. I came back and the file was shut. I tried opening it again and failed to open. It just didn't want to work. I had to repeat everything all over again. So I just took my dad's advice and I redid it to the way that he liked. I submitted that the next day and voila, here's the job. I got the job, I got hired. I jumped between 7 to 8 jobs in lesser than 10 years, from interior design firms to architectural firms, local, international firms. It was a great experience, to be honest. Like for example, I've worked on the Louvre, Abu Dhabi. I've worked on Mall of the Emirates here in Dubai. I've worked on a celebrity private residence, Huda Beauty. It was a great experience. It's a great portfolio at the end for any artist to have. I started using 3D Max, and as every other artist at that time, we just had by default scanline and mental rate to render. The outputs were not great, and then V-Ray just came out. Kiosk Group just changed the whole rendering industry by introducing V-Ray to the market. It was like, wow, what quality is this and how hyper realistic could you get your renders to look like? The problem with V-Ray at that time was so many settings that you had to study and know exactly what each value would change in your render, but it was worth it, to be honest. I worked with V-Ray for around, let's say, 8 years or 10 years. And then I discovered Corona when it came out. It had other options that were not in V-Ray, like the light mixer. Worked for that for around 6 months because it was a short period, I know, to work with the render engine, but I got to discover about GPU renders like Octane Render. There was also, I think, Arion render engine, and these were like a game changer to me again, like how V-Ray was, because they had other options like the focus picker. That was crazy, because to do depth of field in your renders using a CPU-based render engine was quite hectic and made the computer take so much time calculating the values and the lighting and everything to get the realistic look. I worked with Octane for some time until I discovered F-Storm render engine. And this is my go-to solution until today. F-Storm has made things much easier, rendering much faster. It's again a GPU-based render, so you're rendering on your graphics card, not on your processor. And the difference here between CPU-based render engines and GPU-based render engines is, in CPU-based render engine, you need to have a very powerful processor with as much cores as you can. So for example, if you have a processor that's 10 core or 12 core, which gives you 20 to 24 threads of rendering, would give you a render at a fast pace, but at the same time, if you want to increase the speed of your render engine, you need to add another processor to your machine, which is quite expensive. Now, at the opposite side, GPU-based render, you need to have a graphics card that has a high number of CUDA cores. The CUDA cores are responsible for the speed of render. Now, again, in both cases, you have a limitation of loading your scene. So as much as your scene is complex, the more RAM you need in your computer or in your graphics card to be able to load this scene. So let's say, for example, in CPU-based render engines, you need to have a high RAM on your machine. You're talking about 64 GB and above. If it's 128, it's 256, 512 GB of RAM, that's even greater, because it gives you the opportunity to add as much detail as you can in your scene. Now, on the other side, if you're using a GPU-based render engine, which is using your graphics card, it depends on your VRAM, because it doesn't use the RAM in your machine, which is the 64 or 128 that you have. It doesn't use that at all to load the scene. It uses actually the VRAM on the graphics card to load the scene. And here you're talking about the maximum VRAM you have right now on an NVIDIA graphics card is 24 GB. And definitely that's not enough to load complex scenes. But of course, different render engines give different solutions to that part, like using proxies, like compressing bitmaps. All this gives you the chance to lower the amount of VRAM required to load your scene on your graphics card. So the more graphics cards you have, the faster your render will go. So back to me working as a visualizer at the architecture and interior design firms. I really didn't like working under other designers and architects, because they always told me, do this, do that for the render to look better. While you've hired me as a creative to give you good renders. So you can't come and tell me, no, change this or change that in the render. I understand if you're talking about changes in the design, which is your field of work, but when it comes to my field of work, which is rendering, you gotta leave it up to me. It's my profession. I think this is what most of 3D artists think. So I've worked for, like, again, 10 years at firms, and then I thought, no, I need to change this. I need to freelance for some time. And my ultimate dream was to, of course, start my own studio. So I left my job and I freelanced for around a year or two. It was a great, again, opportunity because I met with different designers other than the ones that I used to work with in the firms. And I did many different various projects, various types, from F&B to hospitality to architecture. It was a great chance to meet with other designers and do different projects. And after freelancing for 2 years, I thought, okay, I need to start my own studio. So I spoke to my wife and we came to a conclusion that, okay, that's the best thing to do right now and to move forward. But we started it all wrong. Actually, I started it all wrong because I convinced her that in order for us to be able to have a good studio and do a good start, the image of the studio had to be wow. And so we took a loan. We hired a very expensive office, a big one, which we didn't need at the start, but never mind. We hired 4 visualizers at the start together, which was, again, something that's wrong to do. High salaries, top-notch machines, fit-out work so that the studio looked great when a client comes in. I thought it was for the propaganda of the look or the brand, but I was definitely wrong. And this is the worst thing anyone who's starting a business can do, guys. So please don't do this if you're planning to start a business. And don't start using a loan. Please don't do that. That's a very big mistake, as you'll just keep on paying your loan if you were forced to shut down your business at the end, which happened to me. I had to shut down the business 2.5 years later, almost 3 years later. The reason I had to shut down my first studio was all of a sudden there were no more projects coming in. I couldn't pay the salaries, I couldn't pay the rent, and it was a whole disaster. It was very stressful, actually. So I had to freelance after that for almost 2 years. At the same period of time, I had twins, so the responsibilities were more. And after the 2 years, we had to move accommodation and we had to look for a school for our kids. It was very stressful, not a very good time, but it's okay. Everything passes by, you can go through anything in this life. So we went looking for schools and new accommodation. There was a project which I worked on earlier with one of the designers. It was a great residential plus co-working space project. It was really nice finishes, beautiful vibe. I wanted to actually see things coming to life from the 3D renders which I created. Once we reached there, we actually found a school right next to the project. And we thought, okay, let's go to the school and check out what are the fees, if they would accept the kids or no, do an assessment. And it was all good, actually. The fees were suitable. They did the assessment to the kids. It was all good. They accepted the kids in the school, and it was quite surprising. It's everything coming together at the same time after this stressful 2 years. So we went to the project to check it out, just to see how it looks like. And it was just finished. The project was just completed. They haven't even started renting out the apartments. But the receptionist actually was quite nice to show us around. The finishes were amazing, the facilities, the co-working space. It was like a dream come true, to be honest. And I really wanted to stay there, especially that there was a co-working space where I could freelance for some time until I get another job. We asked them if we can rent an apartment there, and they were like, yeah, we can do that. You would be the first tenants here. And we were like, okay, how much would it cost? And the price was suitable. So we rented there, school was there, the co-working space where I freelanced was there, and it was great. Everything just turned around from being so stressful to very great, I freelanced in that co-working space for around a month. And then one day, an architect friend of mine just came to visit me in the co-working space. And he suggested, Rami, why don't we do a partnership and start a new business? but instead of just providing CG services, let's provide architecture, interior design, and CG. And I was like, full on, let's do it. And this was the start of 88 Design Studio. It was a great start. It was just me and my partner. And right now it's been 3 years and the team has grown to 8 members, which is still growing, and it's going great. It's going great. Talking about AI and how it's going to change the game, the CG game. I think since the start of AI in the CG industry, which is around 2 months back, 2.5 months back, when we got to know about Midjourney, there's also DALL-E, there's Disco Diffusion, but Midjourney has been getting most of the attention. And experimenting and testing with Midjourney gave great results. Concept artworks that you could not imagine a computer can deliver with just a few text prompts from the artist side. I'm sure it's gonna change a lot. It's just started with images, but I'm sure it's gonna go into videos, voiceovers, music. It's just gonna change so many industries. Artificial intelligence, I think, is the way to go in the future. As an ArcViz artist, I would suggest not to keep on doing the same thing you're doing all the time. So if you're doing interior renders, for example, or architecture renders, you need to take a break from time to time. Do something different, work on a personal project, work on a personal animation, and something that is different from architecture and interior design, just not to lose the passion and not to lose the skill and not to lose the eye for the composition. That's what I did, and that's what I actually do whenever I feel like I'm losing the passion, I'm losing some creativity in the ArcViz field. I just shift to another part of the CG industry, like for example do animations, use AI to create concept artworks, and this actually gets me back into the game. To be honest, all this would have never happened without the support of family and my wife. I couldn't thank them enough. My wife, she never complained. She was always supportive. If we fail, we fail together. If we succeed together. And that's the kind of support I think anyone would wish for. Thank you so much for all the support.